Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Without Context podcast. You'll see it's just me and Sharky today. Haley is off talking to her local congressperson. So, woo!
Yeah. Job job
Job.
hunting, and
This is this
everybody
is
else is
less
just kind
job
of doing
hunt.
their everybody else is doing their own thing. So
This is less job hunting and more like because no. I'm manifesting this for her right now. She's got that job.
yeah.
Putting that out there in the world. She's got it. As of the time you see this episode, she has the job. That is me manifesting. Um, so anyway, we are going to talk a little bit about. I guess we'll start it this way. We, as in Sharky and I, have recently finished a long for me, even longer for Sharky, campaign. Uh, where Sharky was a DM, and I think today's topic we really wanted to talk about like that post campaign glow and what comes next.
Yeah, and some like some general talk about, what we did, what could have been done better, lessons to carry over for the
Mhm.
next few things, because this is the first one that I've personally finished. I've run several campaigns in the past with different friend groups, but all of them kind of petered out for whatever reason, like most D&D campaigns do. So we were running this one for about 2.5 years from the actual start of it, and we'll get more into how the evolution of it happened. But we it kind of just came to this ending that none of us really expected. So kind of had a few days to sit and think about that and all this other stuff about it. Um, I had made a tweet on Twitter earlier, uh, kind of to the TTRPG community as a new face in it. Somebody reaching out for the first time, kind of like, hey, trying to gather up questions from an average DM, like no big name content creator who does it for a living, but kind of the more like on the ground guy, like a lot of DMs are. And fortunately, didn't get any real replies to that. Probably because, like I said, I'm a no name when it comes to that community. I'm not anybody recognizable. So,
It's
but
also
I was hoping to get some
on
questions at least from like a general player's like point of view about things.
well on Twitter. It also tends to be like a roll of the dice whether or not you get something.
Yeah.
Not
So
no pun intended with tabletop gaming, but
yeah. So a brief history leading up to the start of this one. As I said, I've run several campaigns in the past. Um, they all have kind of shared themes with each other. I'm a big like theme and trope kind of person when it comes to stories. And when we started this one, it was kind of just a general, um, kind of like characters in a new unexplored lands, kind of having that sense of adventure and discovery. Then it kind of pivoted a few sessions in with something that I usually do, and that is I let things kind of take like the hard left because it seems fun at the moment. Um, and that campaign ran for a few months, and then we started a second campaign in the same world with a new set of players. That was kind of more of like an Underdark kind of adventure and kind of more of like retrieve this artifact, bring it back kind of story. And as I'm doing both of them, I'm starting to realize that the campaigns themselves are kind of missing something. So I look back to the previous campaigns that I ran that I never finished, and concepts and aspects that I liked from that campaign, and worked them into something that both campaigns could unite under. And that's when we got the larger player party that we have. We have regularly 8 to 9 players at a time. We had 11, 2 players dropped out for various reasons, but that stuff happens. And so this campaign became kind of like the third movie in a film series of stuff that I did, where it's like this first campaign I tried to run was introduction, and then the second one kind of used a lot of those aspects but didn't directly relate to it. And then this one, I legitimately took stuff from those two campaigns, said that they were on other worlds, and now we have this campaign world where everything's kind of feeding into it. And what happened was 2.5 years of a story that weaved everybody's characters together. Uh, Characters that were in each campaign now had reasons to like fight alongside each other, and they had stories connecting each other and all that stuff that I felt was missing from each of them that the other party did fulfill, like actually completing. And we had
It's my
more,
characters.
yeah, and we had more planned, but as any DM can uh, come to realize, your best laid plans are sometimes going to be hit by the wayside. And while for the people that were there, it was a very satisfying ending. Something I would do differently if I could was not let it play out like that, because we were missing players and the campaign just ended after a series of circumstances. So it wasn't, it was a group effort, but the whole group wasn't there to enjoy it. And I could have let it play out, stopped the session, got everybody back together for a final session, and then kind of done like the aftermath of it all rather than just hard stop when everything went down. So that was one of the things that I've learned and will be taking going forward is better, I guess, self control when stuff takes that hard left when I don't expect it, and kind of stopping to assess the situation and see what the outcome could be. Who's missing, who's going to miss this part of whatever is happening. Um, and that's all on top of what I've learned over the 2.5 years is just better planning, because when I combined these two, they were the pieces that I needed to kind of link everything together. So if I didn't do that, I'd be struggling to still piece everything together in a coherent way. So I think it's more um, better planning on like that level when it comes to the actual player stories and how they weave into things and how events progress, because the first campaign started I'm using a fantasy earth, so it started in North America with a whole plot, and then it pivoted to this whole different plot. And like off screen, I killed off the big bad from the first like few sessions because I knew we weren't going to get back to him because of all this other stuff that was happening now. So it was kind of a mess. So now I know to at least, if not keeping it smaller and contained, being more aware of what things will do if I decide on something. Um, Aside from that, just don't leave players out of moments like this. Don't just say it's like, oh, they did it, it's over. It's like, no, I have the say. I can be like, all right, we're calling session. We'll finish next week when we can get everybody together.
Mhm.
And I didn't want another thing is trying to figure out when it is appropriate to BS you guys, because everything that happened because of dice rolls or the circumstances that the situation had involved. The interaction with blight and plant life and stuff like that. So there was a lot of circumstances, and I could have just said, "Oh, okay, she'll burn a legendary resistance," but that wasn't on the sheet at the time. So it's like, I couldn't. I didn't feel like I didn't think it'd be right to like rob them, the players of the moment that worked out in their favor like that. So I think it's learning not putting myself into situations where stuff like that is possible, especially when it's intended to be more of a cutscene
I
than.
actually thought about that as you were doing that because um, for for the um, for the audience at home who are listening to this, the thing that happened in the moment was the the big bad is in
So yeah,
her
so
pre
setting
form.
the scene. It was the ending of what I anticipated to be the ending of one of the chapters, and then we would get to the final chapter of the game, which takes place in my world's Atlantis, which is an elf kingdom and stuff like that. And there was this planar gate, and it's very War of the Spark inspired, where it's like I'm going to open this portal to another world, and my army's going to come through, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, so I intended for a cutscene where the witch who is serving this dark god would come in, hit the party with a single meteor out of meteor swarm. Given the damage on that, it was going to knock out a few of the players. So it's just kind of this like power move to kind of put them back to a spot, so it gives her time to escape and all that. And what happened was less players went down than I anticipated for a variety of reasons. Reaction spells absorb elements. One of the characters had resistance to spell damage, which is a blessing that he received from a deity over the course of the game. So stuff played out that less players went down than anticipated. And at this point in the story, the main witch was starting to have this plant-like corruption on her because the dark god that she worships is kind of more of a nature and was more of a nature entity than anything. So uh, his influence was turning them more into like these plant monstrosities. So what happened was she turned away from the party. Since players were still up, I allowed them turn order to try to do something. A hold person succeeded because she had disadvantage because she couldn't see the spell being cast. I ruled that. Like, you can't defend against a spell you're not seeing being cast. That was negated by her magic resistance stat, but the flat roll was a 12. So hold person took effect. So it's like, okay, that's that. And then our other character used Blight at 5th level, which, as everybody knows, is a lot of necrotic damage. But if you do it against something with plant life, it's maximum damage. And the save is at disadvantage. So at the time, we thought that the save was automatically failed if it was a plant. That's not the case. And after the session, I rolled the dice just to see. And she would have failed it anyway at that time. So the Blight hit, doing maximum damage, because I had described her as being partially plant-like. And Hold Person puts them into a paralyzed state. And with that being a melee attack, it was considered a critical. The stat block that I was using for this witch at this time was a wizard stat block, slightly modified, just to give the spellcaster stuff, since I wasn't going to make like a final form until the time was coming, because I didn't expect it to be, as abrupt of an ending as it was. They did 8 over what the max HP was. And this was even with her. Okay, yeah, and this was at full health. So it's like, okay, they aligned up these circumstances just right, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm looking at the sheet and I'm looking to see what I can do. And it's like, there's no reaction. The page doesn't have legendary saves. They won the rolls for the situation. They had a good idea of Hold Person and then using the information available to them with a proper spell.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in that moment at the end of this chapter that was supposed to lead into the finale, being the finale of the game. And none of us expected it to go like that. I didn't. The players didn't. I was kind of trying to figure out, like, how can I have an out of this that doesn't feel like it's robbing the players of this moment. And I couldn't really think of anything. So it's like, you know what, that's it. You guys put together a good combination of stuff, and I'm not going to punish you for that by saying nope, that just doesn't work. It's just, but then it was also like, we had 7 of the 9 usual players, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, game's over. So, and there was a brief high of like, we did it. I finished a campaign after trying 3 times in the past, starting campaigns that just kind of petered out. So it's like I finished a campaign, even if it wasn't the ending that I had anticipated. Most people want their D&D campaigns to end, especially with like these fantasy, like these usual fantasy stories. It's against, a god or like a big evil and this big like cinematic battle kind of thing.
JRPG thing.
The JRPG thing. And ours was just, 4 injured party members and then 2 of them managing to beat the saves. Like 2 of our spellcasters managing to beat the saves. And it's like, after sitting and thinking about it, as I mentioned before, I probably wouldn't have ended it there. I probably would have said, you do that, we'll call session, we'll get together next week, and we'll see what happens. Where we could have everybody. Because it was a day or so after I started thinking, and I was like, some of the players weren't able to be here. They missed this. I feel like I've, robbed them of satisfaction since they weren't here, and it's so sudden. And it was just like all these thoughts, were starting to come in, like these good thoughts. It's like, hey, we finished. People have written epilogues. Here's where their characters are at this point in time. Here's how the world's shaped, because a lot of stuff didn't happen. So a lot of stuff that I had planned for the world to change with doesn't happen. And I'm just like, it's this mix of, this high of we did it, but then there's also this, I denied other players because of how abrupt it was, kind of thing. And that's something that I'm going to be more aware of going into our next campaign in a few months, after I have time to, decompress from this one and actually get more, planned
A
out
long nap.
in advance, while you run Call of the Netherdeep for some of our players in our server, while I just kind of hang out for a bit.
Take a long nap.
But I mean,
I've been thinking about it.
it was a weird road to get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like we've had our ups and downs. Um, there are stressful moments, and there are moments where session is just like felt like nothing happened, because I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
kind of piece together the story at times. And
You're like building it right. You're building it like on the next, like off screen behind us.
and then just like this ending and how like abrupt and sudden it was. Like, it was just one of those things that's like I could have done that better.
Mm.
And it's like that's something I'm gonna be kind of more aware of in the future, because the last thing I want is for a campaign to end, but for it to be like, oh, it just kind of ended without us there, you know. So
Um, I'd been thinking about it for a bit. So there's two different outs that I envision for you here before even hold person happens. Because it's true, it's very true. She was turned away. But before the spell even goes off, you can if a spell has verbal or somatic components, you can hear it. So in my head, I'm rolling a perception check for this my big bad to see if they hear that and they turn around, huh? Counterspell.
yeah, and usually
Uh,
like at moments like that, though, I mean, most of the party was down, the healers were down, so you have like a million things kind of going on in your head as a player
for
and a
sure.
DM, and it's like outside the box thinking like that just doesn't really like flow into your mind like, in the moment.
So the yes, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I remember you were mentioning because the reason that she was in front of us in the first place was because originally Meteor Swarm is because it's a spell range of like 2 miles.
It's a mile.
Um, it's a mile, yeah. So in it, the other thing in my head is this person's like on a hill somewhere, just kind of like you, and you can ask the players to make perception checks, and maybe one of them sees like a figure a mile out on top of a hill, like this, like,
Yeah. But
and it's just things like that.
well, it's like the point of it was also to have her there to kind of divide the
Blue.
party too with
Mhm,
what she told one of the characters.
mhm,
And that was a point of plot with backstories that I wanted to hit on. I even hinted at something like that happening in one of our text RP channels with the Tiefling Warlock Atticus, where his patron's like, "You're going to need to hold your party together when the time comes," because she's the
mhm,
god of prophecy. So she's seen this play out. And then that point of holding the party together is this divide between Tulio and Calum
mhm.
with the information that's found out. Like, so the whole building up to this Atlantis plot was supposed to be this internal conflict now. But it was just like, whoops, all hold person. And
Happens sometimes.
it's just like everything kind of just like went completely like sideways. So, and I mean, with everything that had happened in the campaign, with how previous boss fights had ended, I mean, we were in a tower fight, and the first plan was throw this guy out of a window. Like it wasn't
Listen,
even. So it was a few people from the party against a few enemies because the rest of the party had a previous battle the previous session in another part of this monastery. And it's like, oh cool, it's just the three of these enemies against the four of these players. And the first plan is we're going to throw the muscle of the enemies out the window because they're close enough to the window. We have Sentinel, we have Crusher from the Pugilist class. So it's just like he goes out the window, and I'm like, well, this changes the dynamic a bit.
it's still a pretty good fight.
It was.
The
It's just like
I,
I can't plan boss fights around you all because everything that I can think of, you guys come up with something new most of the time.
Temporary hit points, baby.
So
Um, I I think not even just you, but I think a lot of DMs woefully like underestimate the power of temporary hit points
yeah,
and just being able to gain them for some reason. Like, if you're dealing with dark powers, you can just get them like that. It's really easy.
yeah.
And I think
So
that those types of things are very helpful when it comes to your bosses dying very quickly.
well, temporary hit points don't help when you're thrown out of a window. So
Don't they though?
um, but yeah, so it's like out of everything that happened in the campaign, from unexpected boss finishes to crazy like team up combos to all that, like having the campaign just end like that abruptly is kind of on brand. But at the same
Hmm.
time, the more I think about it, it's like I probably shouldn't have let it end like that. But it's just kind of one of those things that has happened. It's in the past.
Hmm.
After it finished, I kind of talked about plot elements, so it's like I couldn't even just go back into the campaign and without people knowing like stuff and all that. So
Sure.
I was kind of like writing that emotion afterwards.
I think we
Um,
all were. I
but
think we
so
all
like
were.
that first day was great, but then it's like I sat there and I started thinking about it, and I was like, shit, man, I had left people out of this. So trying not to have that like sour it, but it's definitely something that's like I could have done that better. Now, like I could have ended this campaign better.
I think that's a very healthy way to think about things, especially as a DM. I think your best session is the one that's going to come next, not the one that just happened. Your next
Yeah,
session, even if that was your finale, your next session is the next session that happens, or the next
yeah,
session that happens, because you're always building up and you're always getting better.
yeah. So the next campaign is, like I said, it's gonna be in a few months. This one was kind of just more of your general uh, fantasy setting, and I'm actually going to adjust this thing on OBS real quick because I feel like we're kind of off.
Mhm.
There we go. Yeah, we were kind of just sitting
I,
like a little bit below. So,
it's
um,
fine. I also want to point out,
I,
as you're
I had
saying,
to no, I had
more
to quick,
traditional
I had
fantasy
to,
setting.
yeah, I had to quickly like do this 2-person OBS thing because we usually have 3 people. So,
I wanted to quickly say before you continue on that yes, this is a more fantasy setting, but it's also in the same world.
yeah. So the world that I mentioned earlier, the world that I made is just Earth. Like it's a world map of Earth that I found where somebody added additional continents. And I'm assuming those additional continents are like the lost lands of Atlantis, Mu, Lemuria, stuff like that from, I guess, like you call it like crypto history, where it's like lost civilizations and stuff like that. And yeah, ours played out kind of more of just a general like fantasy. We had, people from conquistador, Spanish Inquisition, Spain, people from Gothic Germany, people from steampunk England, elves from Atlantis, which is kind of more of like a crystal magic, crystal tech kingdom, and other places that really weren't like detailed yet because they were just not really given the opportunity to be since the players didn't stay around. Um, and this next campaign is going to be more towards the east now, where I don't know the term for it. I don't want to say Oriental because that's not really a term that people use anymore. But I also don't want to say, Japanese or Korean or Chinese because it's a mix of those three. So
Korean inspired.
how I've been describing it is Asian coded when I describe it.
Mhm.
Um, and that will be the first campaign we start at level 2. Most of our campaigns we start at level 3. The play by post we start at level 1 because that one's just going to be running uh, for however long. This will be a level 2 one because I want to actually take time and some days of the week or some Saturdays not have a full session, but role play out people getting level 3 and becoming their class. So I kind of want to include a lot more role play because that was something that I felt I was weak in for the first campaign was the actual role playing side of things. Um, it's not easy for me to do like voices or like come up with stuff like on the spot, so it's definitely something that I want to kind of improve with. Um, where campaign 1 did have a lot more like combat and it had a lot more unique combat scenarios. So I kind of wanted to start using campaign 2 to kind of work on stuff where I'm weak in certain like categories. The improv is what makes it hard for me.
Um, I always feel like so as far for the three pillars of like of RPGs where it's like exploration, social interaction, and combat. I think your best one was ironically combat and exploration. And then social interaction, it's not even because you can't do voices. It's just, it's the fuck. How do I respond to that? And I get
Yeah,
that a lot too with my
yeah, it's how
players.
to respond to that. I mean, I'm also the crazy DM that people talk about where I run a game for 8 to 9 players at a time.
Yeah,
So it's also stuff like that. Even now, it's
yeah,
like I was planning for this one to be kind of more of a West Marches style for campaign 2, but even now it feels like it's just going to be the 10 of us hanging out in Discord again on Saturdays. Um, but because of that number, we are going to be missing people from time to time as well. And I think with this campaign, I'm going to probably be forced to just run it with who I have and come up with
hmm
scenarios like on the spot for those people. Like I'm probably not going to aim to have story threads like continue from session to session. Like we end here like mid this thing, and the next session will be that thing. Because if those main people aren't here, then we can't really
right.
continue with it. So it's going to be a lot of kind of learning how to adjust and all that. And but yeah, this one's definitely going to have a little more emphasis on role play because we're using the loyalty uh variant
Honor.
rule or the honor rule. So a lot more social interaction involving stuff like that, code of honor, kind of code of like Bushido in a way. and exploration, because at least for this first arc, if you've seen our Discord and how it sets up, there's like something weird happening in a village. So probably a little more detective kind of stuff for this first arc, because you're trying to figure out what's going on.
It's a good thing I'm an intelligence caster.
And but yeah, because Kevin, our friend Kevin, can back me up that every campaign that I've run before this too, the combat has always stood out. Like I like coming up with creative combat
It's
situations.
really cool. It's really
Um,
cool combat.
but I don't want combat to always be ahead of the other two things, because I know some people aren't just in it for constant, fighting. I know some people like the social interaction, some people like the exploration or the sense of discovery that comes with it. So campaign 2 is definitely going to be the me being more aware of the balancing act of what D&D is.
The three pillars.
Yeah.
So I think my personal three pillars. I think I'm much better at the. I think I'm good at the social interaction and the combat. And I think the exploration is where I'm lacking. Um,
It's
that's
hard to
why
do
I run.
it's hard to do exploration. Like a lot of campaigns don't just have like this world, like they don't just like set a wilderness like hex map in front of you or like a city map in front of you and it's like, what do you guys want to do?
There you
Most
go.
players want to just follow the plot. So
Mm.
you as a DM will be like, oh yeah, I've heard something from, this guy over here in the market. Maybe you should go talk to him. And you kind of guide like the party through the social stuff to get to it.
Or you have the players that are like, oh no, that guy can go fuck himself. I'm going this way instead.
Yeah. It's a joke. It's like you enter a tavern and you see a hooded figure sitting in a corner with a scar down his face. Who else is in the tavern? There's a goblin named Boblin. I want to go talk to Boblin.
Yeah,
So
classic.
it's just like, yeah, okay. But it's kind of hard to do uh
Uh, give me one
exploration.
sec.
Sure.
Doorbell.
Okay.
I'm the only one here.
Transition.
Sorry about that. That was uh, that was a weird doorbell, but okay, whatever. I'm here.
Yeah. But as I was saying, like a lot of campaigns don't really give you a good chance to focus on exploration. I think in terms of like recent adventures published by Wizards, it's Descent into Avernus and Ghost of Saltmarsh are really campaigns
Mm.
that let players decide where they want to go and like what they want to do, uh, in what order. Where a lot of campaigns, especially Dungeon of the Mad Mage, Waterdeep, that's more dungeon crawl and social stuff. So
Mm.
it I guess it has to be the campaign designed to kind of focus on exploration to
I think Storm King's Thunder was a good example of a module that was set deeply in exploration. Because
yeah.
spoilers for Storm King's Thunder. After the first, after the first introduction of the giants, you kind of fuck off onto the map and just run around until the DM's like, "All right, time for the plot again."
Yeah. So I guess your campaign kind of has to be geared towards exploration if you want to make it, exploration. Like if I was running a West Marches style game, it would be more exploration, but even not to like the full extent. It would be like, hey, where do you guys want to explore today? Instead of just, like RPing like the travel time and, foraging and all that other stuff. That's definitely an older style of D&D, I think. And I mean, exploration also gets rewarded in dungeon crawls since, you're kind of just in a maze. So, but a lot of my stuff is probably going to be focused more on like social and combat. Probably with a more of a focus on social now, given the system uh, and the variant rules that we're using and the setting. Appeasing people in higher positions than you, or learning to knowing when to like act honorably or dishonorably towards people. So definitely gonna be a little more emphasis on the social side of things.
Uh, I like my character. He's I guess his concept in that world is going to be like bull in a china shop because he has a pretty low honor stat. That's his dump
And
stat. It makes sense because he's not from the area.
and he's a minotaur in an Asian setting. So
Yeah,
He is a bull in the
there's that
china
too.
shop. So,
Yep, yep.
but
I expect you to have like an actual porcelain shop for me to like just terrorize.
yeah, but so we're kind of in the beginning steps of that. Everybody's getting their characters made. I know our friend Erica messaged me asking, what does the party have at the moment? She's trying to
Mhm.
fill a niche because that's another thing that I let happen as a DM. Um, we had characters that kind of overlapped each other in terms of what they do in campaign one. So there was always somebody taking the reign and the other person not being able to really do anything because that person has it handled. And I think I'm going to be kind of more
That,
aware. What's up?
is that like an observation you had, or is that an observation like some of the other people have like mentioned? That's curious to me.
It was something that was brought up. I'm just going to say it's our friend Erica and our friend Mike. Their characters were kind of similar, and what they
Mhm,
did as characters, and their knowledge that they had when it came to
mhm.
things. So one of them would always, you know, it would always be like a kind of push and pull of who would be more useful in the situation.
Gotcha. Okay,
And I don't
that's
want that to happen again. I kind of want everybody to fill like a niche that their character can like shine in. And it
mhm.
was funny because it was almost brought up again because I got the message and she was like, "Hey, I want to do something, supernatural based, maybe like a supernatural hunter." And I was like, "Mike's a ninja that hunts supernatural creatures." So,
Oh no, not
and
again.
that's when I posted in the Discord. I was like, "Hey, everybody, talk about your characters." So, kind of seeing
I
kind of
I
seeing what
intentionally
had and what
Mhm.
didn't, kind of seeing what people had and what people didn't have.
My concepts are intentionally out there so everyone else can pick their own niche.
So yeah, it's just kind of I want everybody to have a chance now to do something unique rather than
Mhm.
having these characters that kind of overlap with each other from time to time. Because in campaign one, Atticus, before I let him switch to a warlock, he was a cleric. So if he was staying a cleric and then Haley started playing, there'd be two clerics kind of,
There was already two druids, so I mean that's
yeah,
fine.
two druids, and even then the character Whis branched off into warlock and sorcerer. So
Mhm.
they were just kind of throwing cross classes into it. Uh,
Yeah, I say druid for two.
so
He's
I kind
just
of
a
yeah, so I just kind of
he's
want people to kind of each have their own like unique like position to fill in the group. It's kind of hard when you have a lot of players. Um, but hopefully
I
talking
think
about
you
it and discussing characters and like histories will probably open up some more possibilities.
I think you also run the risk when you everyone is like a unique like archetype that they're trying to fill with 9 characters, where if one's missing, then or one or more are missing, then it's like, oh crap, now we don't have a healer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But like that was also the same situation that campaign 1 fell in because if we had everybody, we would have 3 characters who deal with engineering or inventing because they're all from Britannia, which is the
Mm.
steampunk England, and that would have been Flory, Doc Green, and Bang.
Uh-huh.
So like they all kind of fill that same niche of engineering or machinery. So I just kind of want to
Yeah,
avoid people. People can overlap, but I don't want them to outshine like one
sure.
another based on what they should know and what their characters should be able to do.
Well, there's a difference between like both people, because even I would say right now, even if like we double up on classes again, I don't think we're gonna hit the same subclasses or the same themes or the same concepts again.
No, because I know some people they have basic ideas, but they're trying to find a combination. They're trying to find like classes to use, and we still have some third party stuff
Yeah,
coming in for this one. The Witchblade, more of a melee sorcerer, and then
yeah,
we have somebody playing a Kensai, which isn't the monk Kensai. It's the Kensai from the Heroes of the Orient book. So it's this whole other class with all this other stuff going on with it. So it's just kind of like making sure everybody can do something. Where it's like, oh, I would do this, but they're better at this than I am, so I'm not going to try. Kind of feeling. So I want to avoid doing that. That was another thing that came up from campaign 1. And I don't want players to feel left out because they can't, outshine somebody else doing something.
It's not even a matter of like outshining. It's just having your own little spot for the spotlight.
Yeah,
I think that is a major difference.
yeah, it's just coming down to, who wants to make this check, and it's like I have the better, modifier for this. So at that
That
point,
works in
it's
play by post because I could just be like, "Hey, I have a +7 to my insight. You want it? You want me to roll it?"
yeah, and
And
that's another thing that's what I'm using the play by post to also experiment with stuff like limiting the number of people who can do checks, because that's another thing that I let happen a lot in campaign 1. It's like, hey, I need somebody to roll me an investigation, and it was like 3 other people would do it also. So it's like, no, I want you to pick who in this party is going to roll for this.
uh,
So
I actually have a suggestion for that. And you can use it if you want. Those of you who are at home can use it if you want. Doesn't matter to me. Um, investigation checks, yes, people should probably roll those, and maybe have 2 people roll that. That's fine. But if it's something like, say, a religion check, or an intelligence-based check, or even other checks as necessary, you want to make sure that the question you want to ask is, are you trained in that skill?
yeah,
Um,
so if you have the proficiency,
yeah, if you have the proficiency, then yes, this might be some esoteric thing that for
yeah.
some reason.
Again, that's just being more aware of
Mhm,
stuff in the moment.
mhm.
I think everything that I've learned from the first campaign going into the second campaign is knowledge that other people can probably use, is that your first campaign is going to be a mess, but
Mhm.
you're going to pick up a lot of stuff and kind of have the knowledge now of like what to do differently and like what changes to make on your side of things. And that's the thing is like campaign 1, it was fun, but it was just chaotic at times, and just
I
all
still
this.
I think
Yeah, it was just
I think it's a good idea to have gotten it like out of the way. It's like to, get it off
yeah,
your back, And
yeah,
now that you can start fresh with another campaign, you can take these lessons you've learned and actually apply them somewhere.
yeah. So now it's like, all right, what did I learn from the first campaign, and how can I put that towards everything moving forward? Um, just kind of being more aware of what didn't work in the
Mhm.
first one, or stuff that worked but you could have done better. I think that's what most players are going to learn as they finish their first campaign, whether it be a homebrew one or whether it be a module ran one. So
It I like one of the things I like the most about running modules is because, like I said, I'm very good at combat. I'm pretty good at combat. I'm pretty good at social interactions. So I
yeah,
got those down pat. The exploration's where I'm lacking, so the modules kind of help me like bridge that gap.
yeah, and Call the Netherdeep is going to give you some chance to do that. It feels like,
I've been reading ahead. There's definitely some like exploratory phases.
yeah. So hopefully, I can take what I've learned from this and put it towards future games. But I have time to actually like plan this one out, and not just not in like fine detail like I had hoped to do with campaign 1, but kind of more just general in the a level range that the story is going to progress in.
Mhm,
So I'm not thinking 10 levels ahead. I'm thinking of between levels 3 and 5
mhm.
and how that story plays out, and then I'm thinking of 5 to 10, like what's the plot of this part of the story.
It's best to think about it in like terms of like the tiers, right? There's a
Yeah,
tier 1, which is like 1 to 5. Tier 2 is like 6 to 10 or something like that, and then
yeah,
tier 3 and is above that. So,
yeah. I think it's like
and,
it's like village, city, region, world is like
mhm,
how well known your people are.
mhm.
So the arcs have kind of, I guess, got to escalate with that to a degree. But I don't know. It was wild. Like I finally cleaned up like the server, and I was going through like old like archive channels from when the campaigns were separate and stuff, and it's like where we started, and how everything had changed up until the end. It was just like a wild journey looking back at it.
Hmm.
It's funny 'cause this was the first session back after like 4 weeks of us having to put it off for various reasons, and then it's just
We were
like
so horny for
done.
D&D that we were like, we're gonna end it.
Yeah.
We're just gonna end it.
So I don't know. It's a good feeling to be done, but like I said, it probably could have been the ending, while satisfying and fitting to how chaotic the party was. Probably could have also been done better to ensure that everybody got a chance to enjoy it. But like I said, I can just take kind of that and keep that in the back of my mind for the next,
Hmm.
campaign we run and all that. But what's the point of doing another one if you're not going to learn from the first one? Especially if the first one's a chaotic mess like it was.
Yeah, so when I ran Storm King's Thunder, I ran it with the context that it's in my world. Toronto's. And so with that context, as the dog is pushing my table, as with that context, I had to like get really creative about this is where this is in my world, this is where this is in my world, and so on and so forth. And kind of some of it was admittedly pretty arbitrary. I like pinged a location on the map, but that's where it is. Go there. Um, but I think as I completed that campaign, and it was pretty scuffed until like towards the end, and even the end was kind of scuffed. But that's okay. Like you were saying, your first campaign is always scuffed.
Yeah.
Um,
You can
I
only
I
hope
now run.
you
Yeah.
can only hope to like learn from it.
Hmm.
So
My next campaign that I run another game in that world, and in that one I've taken all the lessons that I've learned. I've DM'd all of my players, all my original players, like, hey, where do you guys think you would be in like 5-10 years?
yeah.
And they're populating the world, kind of making it richer. And all of them are kind of, except for one who's in hell doing like a Davy Jones type of thing. But the rest of them are like populating the world, doing their own thing now. Because the way it ended is like everyone kind of just, it's like the Fellowship where like they did the thing and then they kind of split off. It was very cool, and I get to take those lessons that I've learned from running a scuffed Storm King's Thunder and take them on to a new campaign where those players are making my world richer.
Yeah. So I think if I was going to give advice for any DMs like running a campaign who are worried about it, just run it and finish it and just learn what you did because if it starts, it can start good and get scuffed. And even if you try to end strong, it's still going to be kind of scuffed because of how it's
Hmm.
progressed. But the most you can do is learn from it for when you start the next one. And if your players are still playing, then they're enjoying it. So,
I'll ask your players after every session. Hey, did you guys have fun? You're gonna hear that if you ever is sitting on my session hierarchy. Hey, did you guys have fun? And they're gonna say yes or no, one way or the other. And I will address concerns as necessary. And you'll see that every single session is I cannot live unless my players have told me that they had a good session.
yeah. And like, that's the biggest thing for me, too. Like, I would always end it and be like, shit, did I run a good session? And then, like, when I asked, I did get the feedback where it was like the 3 sessions, like back to back to back of like tension was happening and like stuff was happening in the plot and it was like burning people out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there was just kind of like
Yeah.
there was kind of moments where it's like, I could have been more, aware of things. But like I said, that's just stuff you're gonna learn going
Mhm.
forward.
I think another thing for newer DMs or aspiring DMs is you want to learn. You want to always the one thing you always want to keep in the back of your mind is the stuff that if you should have done a session zero. That your players that your players and these are their phobias, these are their triggers and stuff like that. So that if you know that something similar to that is going to come up, you remember in your head is does this person mind if I like blank screen it and imply it off screen, or does this person just not want to hear about it at all?
Yeah.
Um, that's maybe the most important thing I can ask any aspiring DMs to do your session 0, do it right. Figure out where the boundaries are for your players and yourself, and make sure you are enforcing that at all times.
Yeah, and that was like something that happened with when it came to our friend Lindsay's character's backstory. Uh, Based on the situation where there was somebody in power who was abusing her, and it was always implied what he wanted. And I asked when I talked to Lindsay about it, I was like, "How do you want me to play this guy?" And pretty much got the go ahead. It's like, if you can make my skin crawl, you're doing it right. So, but I
Yeah,
never
that's
there
what
was
we call
never
an
a
enthusiastic.
yeah, but there was never like an explicit like thing that happened. It was always implied, sometimes heavily implied, just to get the point across.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, nothing ever like that really happened. So that's another thing to just keep in mind is figure out what makes your players comfortable and uncomfortable and adjust accordingly.
And make sure you're like, make sure that yes, that is happening to the player, but you still have like 5 other players at the table, 5, 6, however many you have.
Yeah,
You had like 20, so that's fine.
yeah.
But
'Cause I'm a madman.
uh, yes, you are. But it happened like it's happening to one player, but it's also all the other players can still hear it,
Yeah,
even if their
they're
characters
still
are not there at the
there.
moment.
They're still there experiencing it in the moment.
So that is another thing to keep in mind is yes, that person is okaying it enthusiastically, but these other players still have to hear it, and it might make them uncomfortable as well.
Yeah,
That's why it was a good idea for Sharky to be like, no, this is just implied. Just move to the side.
yeah. Do not become the next post on RPG horror stories.
Yeah.
So read
A lot
that
of RPG horror stories are just
read
like
that
you
shit
did
and
session
read
zero.
that shit and keep yourself grounded. Like, don't be those guys.
No kidding.
Don't be those DMs either. It's just some people are fucking crazy.
A lot of RPG horror stories happen because they didn't session zero.
Yep, I did not.
Um, and I'm gonna say I've gone through all of my with this campaign that I'm gonna be running in your Discord. I've gone through every player individually. Like, hey, these are the triggers as I see it in this that since I've read through the module. These are the triggers as I see it. If any of these bother you, let me know. We'll see. I'll see what I can do about it. Um, and I've gotten all my responses back. But even with that, I'm still gonna go back our session 1 and still take 30 minutes and be like, all right, guys, this is what we're agreeing to here. This is the shared experience that we're agreeing to. Is everybody okay with this?
Yeah,
Um,
so it's just communication. Like, I
mhm,
know we started both of these campaigns that eventually fused into this mega campaign without a session 0, which is something that I'm going to fix when we finally do start campaign 2. We
mhm.
do have a RP channel like set up for the prince that you guys serve under, like approaching the village. But the campaign, the session 0 is going to be talking, and then that's going to be kind of the lead in to the first session. So we kind of have like a baseline to work with, and that is something else to get better for myself in doing.
Mhm.
Actually, just like jumping in, but it does kind of make things a little sloppier since I'm kind of
It
piecing
can.
everything together.
Um, but like we say, that's the improvement that you're taking from the last 2 campaigns that fused into one. Is that you're taking that session 0, you're taking the concept of a session 0, and you're like, all right, this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
I think over time, honestly, the safety tools that people have come up with have become it's become more in vogue to use them. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Especially with a bunch of like actual plays coming out, and these people are like, no, we session zeroed all that intense role play. That is because we agreed to it together.
yeah. And I mean, with the players that I have at the table, I feel like we all have a amount of trust with each other
Hmm.
uh, to not be too wild about it or to not go like too far. Two things like there is still room for improvement in some aspects, but it's not something that people are like actively like uncomfortable with happening at that moment. So I was thinking, just get a
Yeah,
table you trust.
yeah. That goes for the players and the DMs.
Yeah,
Um, I will say I specifically picked my players because I came in really early. Like I have a brand new player, so I'm going to surround this new player with players that I know will help them out
Yeah.
because I'm going to be balancing a lot of things on my end. So I need those what do you call them, pro bono player representatives to help this one player out.
Yeah.
So I specifically picked my table with that context. I was like, all right, cool. I'll pick this person, this person, this person, this person, because they're not going to actively like push this person's buttons in a way that will make them uncomfortable.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess if there was any, advice to pass on to just kind of the average DM who is wondering like, what to keep in mind from a finished campaign is just think back on it. Think back on things like at the end of the session, you're going to stop and think it's like, shit, I could have done that a little bit better. And like that's just gonna be something you have like always going through your mind. But definitely looking back through it all, did I give them enough time to role play? Did I, focus too heavily on role play and nothing else? Did I, do a session zero? Did I make anybody feel uncomfortable by accident? Did I, I got put into a situation as a DM. Did I handle that, as creatively as I could, or rather than just, kind of stop things, dead in their tracks because of it? So it's just kind of
Uh,
stuff to stop and think about. Keep a notebook, write down stuff to think about. Just kind of keep yourself improving all the time.
you will never be as man. I guess I'll put it out there. You'll never be as incompetent as a DM that I've had in the past. Where we were playing the Tales from the Yawning Portal module or
Yeah,
module, like it's a bunch of different like one shots. Um, and as we did one, and the way it works is you're in a cave and there's a dragon like under the waves somewhere.
yeah.
And all of us played our characters exactly how we would. I popped the damn thing with an arrow, and did like minuscule damage, and then it next turn it breath weaponed us and killed us all. So it's like, yeah, I think playing the characters the way I would that they would should be played, especially that person was like particularly like I hate dragons because they the dragon ate my village or that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And the way the next turn they were just like breath weapon, all right, we're all dead. I still don't know why that dragon was there.
yeah. It's like what was supposed to lead into the cutscene. It's like, okay, I'm going to hit them with one meteor because reading the spell, they can overlap. So anything within the radius is going to take damage from each of them. So I was like, I'll hit them with one. I'll use one to destroy the ship they were trying to get to, and I'll drop two into the village or into the city.
Mm-hmm.
And like, all right, this is going to knock out a lot of people. I'm not going to anticipate rolling very high, so I don't risk killing the players. I know with the blessing that our character Tulio had, that he may remain standing, which is what I intended or what I wanted to happen because
Yeah,
is going to focus on him at that moment. But
corp
then
storytelling, baby.
we got a good enough. I got like a kind of a mid-range roll, and then some people had that halved because of absorb element reactions that characters had. Um, so yeah, by the end of it, just four people remain standing out of the party of nine. One of them was the person that I intended to have remain standing, but it was just the other players that changed the scenario.
Mm,
So it wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to drop all 4 meters onto these players because that will kill them. I was like, I'm going to take a
yeah.
calculated risk and use one and hope that it doesn't ruin the game.
Mhm.
So
I think
yeah,
we were level 5 at the time we fought that dragon too. So like that was an adult. That was an adult black dragon.
I mean, you guys were
We're not
level
surviving that.
you guys were level 10. Uh,
Yes.
it was a CR 14 like wizard spell block, but there was 9 of you. So I think according to the Cobalt Fight Club thing, it was either an easy or a medium. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay. And I know it's like they have the one level 9 spell slot. So I'll use that and I'll drop one and just kind of see how the numbers play out.
Hmm.
And I mean, if it knocked everybody out, that was kind of the intent, cutscene plays out and then the game continues. because there were other people still around. The city was having its revolution. Alonzo was still in the picture somewhere. People could have come to, save you.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to let the
Dr. Morris
party
off
die.
screen.
Yeah, I wasn't going to let the party die. It was going to be more of a fade to black, and then the party wakes up, and now we continue the next arc.
Mhm.
I know that's another thing of like, player agency, but given the scenario, it doesn't kill you, but it's definitely going to hurt. And that is also amping up the villain to a degree. It's like, I could
Mhm.
have killed you. So,
I think
cat.
I think players shouldn't consider player agency being like I can do what I want at all times. I
Yeah.
think you have to have trust in your DM, like we trust you to be like, no, he's gonna tell a baller ass story right now. This is a moment that we're gonna give up our agency in this moment so that the DM can continue the story. And I think a lot of players don't realize that the DM isn't an antagonist to you, as this cat snuggles up to me.
No.
The DM is on your side. It's just that they're throwing obstacles at you so that for you to overcome. They're not throwing monsters at you specifically to kill you.
Yeah.
It is purely a relationship so that we can tell the best possible story with what we are given at the time.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not going to, I understand, like, following the dice from time to time, but when it's like, oh, if the dice tell me that all of my players are unconscious and now I'm going to have them all rolled, death saves and risk losing multiple people, I'm going to say, no, we're not going to do that. I'm going to have some other characters save the party
Yeah.
so we can continue on. It's just, this is definitely going to be like a cinematic moment. So, but I guess that's a good enough conversation. Got over an hour here. So,
Yeah. Hit our hour.
yeah.
I knew immediately we're gonna hit an hour with this just because of how much we can talk about this topic because it's a lot, right? Um, and I would say as a final word to DMs out there or aspiring DMs rather, if you have watched if you've watched an entire season of Critical Role or Dimension 20
Matt has ripped
or
up character sheets and paper because the party has changed stuff. So even his campaign is not infallible.
well, my point to that is, uh, for those of you who see these DMs and are like, I want to try DMing. If you've watched Critical Role, if you watched Dimension 20, if you watched like the official Dungeons and Dragons stories
Yeah.
that they have there, you're ready. You can do it. Pick up Player's Handbook. Pick up the starter kit. You're good to go. It's a decent adventure in there.
You don't have to be.
You can
We've
run
said
that.
it. I think we said it in the group before. You don't have to be the perfect DM. You just have to be the perfect DM for your players.
Yes.
So if they want to keep coming back to you, you're doing something right.
Mm-hmm.
But it also doesn't mean like you don't have to. You don't have to not improve. Like you can keep learning something to improve yourself as it. But it's not like, hey, I did something wrong. My players don't seem to care, so I'm just not going to change that. It's
Right.
like, I could have done this better. I know I could have done this better, so I'm going to do this better next time.
Next time. Yes,
So,
exactly. Talk that shit, Sharky.
it's always a learning thing. Like take every campaign, every session you do, every one shot you do, like try new stuff, see what works for you, what works for your players and what doesn't, and then just eventually make it this big old mix. But
I'm not putting 9 players into one campaign.
no, I need help. I just have a lot of
I,
friends, okay?
I picked 6 and I was like even this is stretching like this is stretching me, but I think I got this from here. But it was like, "Oh, you've already picked all your players." I was like, "Yes, I am not a Sharky hat.
Yeah.
I am not Sharky."
I know I should narrow it down a bit, but like I don't want people to be left out of things. So if I'm be like, hey, I just want 6 players to play in this campaign and then have the other 3 like kind of sit out, it's like, no, that doesn't make me feel good because I'm neglecting 3 friends from playing.
We tried that initially, right? It was like, okay, the first 5 people to hit in, you guys are in. But yeah, that did kind of fall through.
Yeah, because everything started linking all the players together and
Yep.
other stuff like that. And sessions plot thread started continuing past the one shot.
And I also want to say that these things where Sharky can have all these players in his games, that works for Sharky. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And that's the last lesson that you should learn as an aspiring DM is that no two DMs are the same.
Yeah.
I DM differently from Sharky. Sharky DMs differently from me. We both DM differently from Matt Mercer and Brendan Lee Mulligan. And I'm not going to DM the same way you're going to DM.
Yeah.
You're going to DM the best way for your table. I'm going to DM the best way for my table.
Yeah. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation, at least. A little bit different than what we normally do, but kind of a retrospective / advice discussion. Like, just kind of throwing out stuff from somebody who is just, your average DM. Like, we're not, Matt Mercers or Brennan Lee Mulligans. So it's
Not
just
going to be
this. We are the people that are going to more than likely, be at your table, or you're going to be at our table. So we're on the same tier list of DMs. So
yeah. I don't know. Just pick up a player's handbook, go nuts. You got this.
yeah, pick up the 3 books, go crazy. You don't have to do a lot of homebrew. You don't have to buy like everything. Just buy the 3 core books and just try it out. So
You will love it. Trust me.
yeah, it's a great game. It's something that you can do for a long time too.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess we'll probably conclude this episode here.
Yeah.
So thank you all for listening to me basically ramble for an hour. I know the campaign is probably out of context for a lot of you all since you weren't there and you don't know like the intricacies of it, but hopefully I was able to take stuff that happened and kind of put it into a relatable kind of scenario for you all. And
That's the
kind
name
of
of the podcast,
advice,
you know.
just kind of give you some advice if you ever come across a situation like that.
Mm-hmm.
We were hoping to get Pyrotechnics back in, but unfortunately, scheduling could not work out, and it would have been nice to have somebody, from the outside, with questions and stuff like that to
Mm-hmm.
kind of feed it in, like kind of help guide the conversation. Try to get some stuff off Twitter, but like I said, I'm a no name in the TTRPG community, so nobody's going to talk to. Simple SharkyHat.
Oh, don't start that. If you have any questions for us, especially if you are a newer DM, go ahead and put them in the comments. Both of us have been DMing for Shark has been DMing for forever. I've been DMing for about 5-ish years at this point. To say however long Sharky, how long have you been DMing?
5 or 6, ever since 5th edition really started picking up with Critical Role. I think it was
we have
about halfway through Critical Roles when I started with 5th edition.
So
I started with Pathfinder. So
oh god,
and that was that's a whole mess of another system I never want to go back to.
So we have about 11-ish years of experience between the two of us. So that's probably enough for the questions that you may have. And if they're not, then I'll tell you who you can go to.
Yeah.
And if you like what you see here, you can like it. You can share it with a friend. Comment on it. Subscribe if you really want to see more of us. And I mean, this has been without podcast context. Nice. Without context podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Bye. Bye, everybody.